All right, last topic we're going to cover, Introduction to Inheritance. Inheritance, you may recall, is a way of making objects that are similar to other objects. We can then inherit the qualities of the original object and add to it. And the way we do that in C++ is with derived classes. In a derived class, we create a class, we derive a new class from it, and then we can add new things to it. In display 10.9, there is a savings account class that is derived from the bank account class. It has all of the stuff that's in a bank account plus additional features. So you'll notice here's the bank account class defined. If we skip down here to savings account, you'll notice we say class savings account followed by a colon, public, and bank account. That's the way we derive savings account from bank account. You'll notice savings account doesn't have any private member variables. That's because since it has inherited the private member variables of bank account, it does not need new ones. Savings account only needs balance and interest rate, just like bank account had. But it declares its own constructors, and we should probably have included a default constructor here, but they didn't, and has the additional public member functions deposit to add money to the bank account balance or to the savings account balance, and withdraw to take money out of the account balance. And if you look at the main code, when we declare a savings account, it's going to call the savings account constructor with 3 member variables. Down here, you'll notice the initialization section calls the bank account constructor. It's not doing anything different with that information, so it's just calls the previous constructor, so it doesn't have to write any extra code. And here are the new functions, deposit and withdraw. Anyway, back to the main. When it calls output, we did not declare a new output function, so it's going to call the output function that's part of bank account. Deposit is part of savings account, so it's going to call that. output again, withdraw again as part of savings account, and output. And you can go as deep as you would need to. In the book, they have the class CD account, which is derived from savings account, but it adds the days to maturity in addition to the balance and the interest rate. So there's no reason to recreate an entirely new class if you're doing a lot of the same things as an existing class. You can just derive a new class from it. So let's talk about the homework for this week. This will be our final assignment. So we're going to try and make it a little more challenging. Assignment 12, Chapter 10, Project 13, the PostNet barcode. The PostNet barcode is being replaced. They haven't completely replaced it yet with one code on every piece of mail. But there used to be a PostNet barcode that used and I mean it still exists, but it uses a series of tall and short bars to represent the digits of a zip code.
Is it orange and printed at the bottom?
Well, it's typically printed at the bottom. It's not necessarily orange. You may have seen a 1 code. Let's see if we can find. So if we look on Wikipedia, for example, here's a sample PostNet barcode that would go on a piece of mail. And there's some rules about where it should typically go. Here's a sample address label. So this PostNet barcode should correspond to the numeric barcode here, 85953. So if we're trying to go from 85953 to a barcode, there's a set of rules for building the barcode. And in Project 13, starting on page 598, they go through those. They're going to convert it into a series of 1s and 0s, where a 1 indicates a tall bar or a tall bar, and a 0 indicates a short bar. So this tall bar would be a 1, this short bar would be a 0. And then they give, they have a series of 5 bars to indicate each numeric digit of the code. And they include the whole thing between 2 tall bars indicating the start and stop point. So if we go back and look at this barcode, tall is a 1. Then we have 1, 0, 0, 1, 0. Then a 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. Then a 1, 0, 1, 0, 0. Then a 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. A 0, 0, 1, 1, 0. And a 1, 1, 0, 0, 0. And then the trailing bar. So if you look at that chart, barcode digits and value, the values go 74210. That's almost binary coding. But they've done it this way in order to enforce another rule, and the other rule is for every set of 5 bars, there are always 2 tall bars and 3 short bars. For every set of 5 bars, there are always 2 tall bars and 3 short bars. If a code doesn't have 2 tall bars and 3 short bars, it's not a valid code. A set of 5. And those 5 digits can be used to represent any digit from 0 to 9, except the 0 is represented by something that adds up to 11. All right, makes sense? So if we decode this by hand, 7 plus 1 is 8. 4 plus 1 is 5. 7 plus 2 is 9. 4 plus 1 is 5. 2 plus 1 is 3. And 7 plus 4 is 11, which is 0. So it looks to me like this barcode they have on here is not representing, oh, wait a minute, there's an extra digit in here. An extra number. What do you suppose that means? In an actual postnet, there is always a check digit calculation. So since this is only a 5-digit zip code, and they use the check digit algorithm. Here's the check digit algorithm. the check digit is a 10 minus, or in other words, the digit sum modulus 10. Okay, so we add the digits together. 85953, 85953. So that's 10 plus 12 is 22, plus 8 is 30, modulus 10 is 0.
Why did they do that?
Well, that's just another way of confirming that it's a valid code. If technically, if we read the barcode and that check digit was incorrect, we would have to say, well, this is not a valid zip code. It needs to be rejected, or we need to try and read the barcode again. So since they're doing this at a high speed, it's a way to make sure that we actually read that correctly. So, for your assignment, I want you to make the PostNet class. The PostNet class should internally store one value. They say it can be either a barcode string of ones and zeros or a zip code number. Either of those is fine, whatever makes the most sense to you. I want you to be able to input either a numeric zip code of 5 digits or 9 digits,
Plus 4.
zip plus 4.
It like narrows it down to say you're out or whatever.
Okay. Well, if you look on a bill when you get home, if you have any bills, normally you'll see on the zip code there will be 5 digits, a dash, and 4 more digits.
My driver's license just says 0.
They're not smart there.
Yeah,
That's what it's supposed to be then.
It should have numbers, but they
Yeah,
don't
it should
accept
actually have
them.
numbers.
Give it to them.
yeah, and so whatever the
Just says dash.
whatever the driver's license people are doing is wrong. But in fact, if you look up an address on Google, for example,
Put that on letters, it'll get there faster too.
sometimes you'll see the zip plus 4. It doesn't have it there. I have seen it before. I swear.
Mine plus 4 is 7116. USPS.com, if you do their zip code lookup, will tell you.
It's secret.
So if we were going to send mail,
There it is.
there we go. So for this address, the zip plus 4 is 73107-6120. So, you can pretend that your program is hooked up to a barcode reader that just feeds back raw barcode values, ones and zeros for tall and short bars. And if you get ones and zeros, you need to validate that code and convert it to a numeric zip code, either 5 or 9 digits. And I've said to handle it with or without check digits. So if a check digit is present, you need to validate it. If the check digit is absent, you need to generate one. If the input zip code has dashes in it, you should ignore them. So if I entered 73107-6120, you should output the corresponding ones and zeros representing the barcode plus a check digit. Tell me that I didn't have a check digit, but the correct check digit should be whatever it is. And if I enter a string of ones and zeros, you should return the zip code that corresponds to that set of ones and zeros as if it were tall and short bars. And again, if I supply a check digit, validate it, tell me whether it was correct or not. And if I don't, generate one. You don't have to generate one in either case, but you can tell me what you generated and whether it matches the one that was entered or if there was one entered. Does that make sense to everybody? And can you output tall and short bars? I don't know. You might check the extended ASCII codes past 126 and see what they look like, but you'll have to go out on your own to find that. I know there are some symbols that can allow you to make boxes and things, but I don't know if they have a short bar or not. But if you wanted to find that and use it, I would not object to that. All right, so let's talk about how you need to do this assignment then. And I will find my grading criteria and add that to the assignment probably tomorrow. We need a postnet class. It will need to have a private member variable to hold on to something. So that could be a string that has the digits of your zip code in it. It could be who knows? If you're using ones and zeros representing a barcode, and you start with 9, you multiply that by 5, and you get 45 plus the tall bar on each end, so that would be 47. Too big to put in an integer, for example. So you may have to use strings. I don't know.
You use an array of booleans. That's 47.
No.
Genius idea.
So what kinds of things do we need in order to write this class?
Yes, an integer in zip code.
Is that what you would like to have in zip code? You may experience problems. You may run into problems using an integer, but they say to have a function that returns the zip code as an integer. I'm just telling you, you may run into problems with that, depending on
What would be better?
where zeros are and whether you got a 5-digit or a 9-digit or a 6-digit or a 10-digit number. You may end up finding that you need to use strings. I'm just saying.
So it'd be better as string zip code?
I don't know. Think about it. Let's talk about what kind of functions you're going to need. So your zip code class encodes and decodes 5-digit barcodes. And I said you should also use 9-digit barcodes. You're also going to need to handle check digits. You're going to need constructors. And they say the first constructor should input the zip code as an integer, and the second should input the zip code as a bar code string consisting of ones and zeros. So if it gets input as a barcode and your private member variable is the zip code, you're going to have to convert it before you store it. You probably should also have a default constructor. That's generally recommended. You're going to need at least two public member functions, one that returns the zip code as an integer and the other one returns the zip code in barcode format. If you have any helper functions, you should make them private. And you're going to need to have a suitable test program. So you're going to have a main function. Your main function should allow me to enter barcodes or zip codes and your code will return the appropriate response. And give me an error message if an invalid barcode or zip code is entered. I'm not going to figure out what my ending condition is yet, so I just put while true. So I've got a zip code or a barcode. I don't know how I'm going to determine that yet. But let's say we have a barcode. I can just call the constructor for a string, right? And then just calls get zip code, right? Which means that first the constructor is going to convert it from a barcode to the zip code, if that's the way I'm storing it, and then get zip code is just going to get the zip code and output and send it back to me. So how am I going to convert from a barcode to a zip code?
you do that thing where it would read like 5 characters at a time?
That makes sense. How are we going to do that? Where would I find that?
Size?
Chapter 5, is that a, or no, what did you say?
The size thing?
I guess I'm not hearing you.
It's probably better that way.
Size? Is that what you said? Size? Okay, size will tell me what about the string? Will tell me how many characters are in it, right? Chapter 8 has strings and all that good stuff in it. And page 471 and 472 have a lot of interesting member functions of the string class. If you don't keep this book forever, there are places to look.
Yeah, right.
Size, length, max size. Substring might be useful. If we look at chapter 8, substring says it takes 2 parameters, position and length. Position is the first character to be copied as a substring. Length is the number of characters to include in the substring. So if we wanted to break our string up into 5-character pieces, first it might be useful to know how many we expect to get. I said you should be able to handle 10 digits because 9 plus a check digit, right? So if we have a string or an array of 10 strings, and then we could say my barcode length -2 for the two bars front and back. Divided by 5. And now I should be able to construct a for loop to extract all those individual digits out, right? How would I do that?
What did we subtract to?
Every barcode starts with a tall bar and ends with a tall bar.
Okay.
Does this make sense, what I'm doing? Do you have any questions about why I'm doing any of this? So I've made an array of strings, 10 strings, because that's my maximum size of barcode. If digits is greater than 10, right? So this is another case where we're going to have to deal with errors, but keep running. So if you've got an invalid barcode, you're going to have to do something about it. So how would I go through this barcode, however long it is, divided up into individual strings of 5 characters? We know how many we're getting, right? We calculated that and put it in digits. So a for loop looks like what?
Yeah. It's going to be what we would do for supply.
Yes?
Or use I and use that. Then it's 0, then we want it to be around
There's a classic for loop. Let's go back and see what we're doing here. So in my case, I said All right, we skip over the first one, and then we separate out the first group of 5, and then the second group of 5, and the third group of 5, and the fourth group of 5, fifth group of 5, and the sixth group of 5. And then we ignore the last part, right? So theoretically, in order to validate this, I probably, in addition to verifying it's not too long, I should say if my barcode 0 is not equal to 1, or my barcode length minus 1 is not equal to 1. That's also an invalid barcode, right? And now I can ignore the start and end, because I'm going to process the rest of it.
Length minus 1 because arrays start at 0. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
So if it's 40 digit characters long, the last one is number 39. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm storing each individual digit into an A-digit string, right? So A-digit number I should be what? Any of those functions on page 472 help us out here? Or the one I looked up, substring? Is that going to help us?
Say str.sub.str position length. Oh, str.length.
Okay, in this case, our string is called my barcode dot s substring. Okay, position is going to be what? I times five okay, I'm violating my rules here, but you don't have to. Plus 1 and then a length of 5, right? So if we really want to make that a little nicer, we would say Okay, so that breaks it up into groups of 5.
So we need to check each group of 5 adds up to,
We could do that.
we need to do that,
Um,
or check it somewhere else.
what I would suggest is take a shortcut. I forget if you can do this or not, but let me see if you can. Zero is 11. 1 is 0 is this one. I'm going to take these out when I'm done. 2 would be 0, 0, 1, 0, 1. 3 would be 0, 0, 1, 1, 0. 4 would be 0, 1, 0, 0, 1. 5 would be 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. 6 would be 0, 1, 1, 0, 0. 7 would be 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. 8 would be 1, 0, 0, 1, 0. 9 would be 1, 0, 1, 0, 0. Right? Not going to let me do that, is it? Data member initializer is not allowed. So, what I'm going to say is I'll do it in my constructor. And that means it cannot be a constant. What does that buy me? Anything? Any ideas?
If you break that up like we did before, you could compare this the segments to each other.
I've got an individual digit here. I could loop through my codes. If I found it, then the current digit must be equal to J, right? That's one way to do it. Now, what did I not address? What if I didn't find it? That would be an error, right? So I need to figure out if I found it or not. And since I'm doing this off the top of my head, this is unlikely to be the most efficient way to do this, right?
was thinking if you just actually evaluated it instead of comparing it to the.
Another way to do it would be actually evaluate each character.
Like if it was in place 1, it would be.
So instead of having a long string of ones and zeros, which is kind of a cheat, by the way, we could say like you said, make sure they're all ones and zeros, and they add up to 2. And then we could evaluate each individual digit for j equals 0 to bar digit. So I'm going to have to figure out, what do I do? Value equals value plus digit value j. Times times the current value. So if it's 0, that'll be 0. If it's 1, that'll be 1. What I'd like you to do is think about it, try to come up with your own solution. We'll have some more time to talk about it next week. I'll make the due date Um, the official due date will be the end of next week. So you should certainly be making some progress by then. And if you have any questions, send me an email, include your code. I've shown you a couple of ways that it could work. There's always another way. So if you come up with another different way, doesn't mean it's wrong, it's just different. There's some code in the assignment text here. I forget what it looks like. In this case, I divided it up into individual strings, so I didn't have to extract it out separately. What's the substring? If you're converting from a number back to a barcode, it is going to be easier to have an array of strings. Because you say 7, well, that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's this one. I don't have to calculate.
Backwards.
Yeah. You have to be able to translate it both ways, but I'm just saying. So start working on it. It's, as you can see, it starts to get deep pretty fast. So you need to get ahead of it and send me your questions. Any questions right now? No? All right. Well, hope you've learned something. We are going to just be working on, well, we'll have a quiz next week. We'll work on the homework. I'll do the final review. And then the following week is finals. For finals week, I won't be taking attendance again. You'll have to take the final during the time that's allotted, which is our normal class period. So from 5:45 to 8:15. If you want to take it from somewhere else that you have an internet connection, that's fine with me. I don't care. As usual, you will be able to use your book and your own notes, so that shouldn't be a problem. And we got about 15 minutes left tonight if you want to keep working on this. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.
I do have questions on this.
Yes?
It's about the last assignment.
The previous assignment? Okay. I need to come look at what you're working on.
Just one last time.
Okay. Let me shut this down and I'll come take a look.